Hello everybody, good afternoon. Welcome to today's class on pregnancy, hypertensive disorders of pregnancy. I, Dr. Soumya, will start today's session from where we had ended in the last class. We were discussing on the examination points of a preeclamptic woman. Obstetric examination, there is nothing particular except there might be features of IUGR or oligohydramnios in some cases where you find the gestational age, height of the uterus will be less than the gestational age. Coming to the maternal investigations. How do you investigate a case of a preeclampsia? Tests may be abnormal even when the BP elevation is minimal. So that is why it is mandatory once you diagnose hypertension, increased BP in a pregnant woman, you have to get her investigated whatever mild the BP levels are. First one, the urine dipstick test for proteinuria. Quantitation by lab methods if more than 1 plus on dipsticks. On dipstick there are different values. Say traces 1 plus, 2 plus, 3 plus, 4 plus. So once it is 1 plus or more on dipstick examination, you should get quantitative examination of 24-hour urinary excretion of proteins. Then urinary albumin creatinine ratio to detect significant proteinuria if it is more than 30 mg per milliosmoles. 24-hour urine collection is not necessary in routine clinical management. Routine blood examination includes total count, differential count, peripheral smear, BT, CT and hemoglobin. Serum urea, creatinine, electrolytes including lactate dehydrogenase and uric acid. Liver function test which includes AST, ALT and it is significant if it is more than 70 international units per liter, that is it should be twice the normal values. Skyogram of chest, PA view to see the pulmonary capillary wedge pressure, brain natriuretic peptide for the detection of pulmonary edema which again indicates towards the severity of the disease. Diagnosing preeclampsia, eclampsia. How will you diagnose? When the BP is more than 140/90 at or after 20 weeks of gestation on 2 occasions at least 6 hours apart during bed rest. 160/90 is severe disease. It should be accompanied by one or more of the following. Either significant proteinuria, that is when the urinary dipstick test shows 1 plus or more on random urinary sample, then random urinary protein to creatinine ratio should be more than 30 mg. 24-hour urine excretion is shows 300 mg in 24 hours. Renal involvement is when serum creatinine is more than 90 millimoles per liter. And next feature is oliguria, that is when there is less than 400 ml of urine collection in 24 hours. Then hematological examination, the significant point to tell that the disease is severe, we mainly look upon the hemoglobin percentage and platelet when the platelet is less than 1 lakh. Liver involvement when there is raised AST, ALT to more than 70 and severe upper abdominal pain or epigastric pain which indicates towards the severity of the disease, because as we have discussed earlier there will be stretching of the Glisson's capsule, that is the liver capsule, which leads to this pain. And why there is stretching of the capsule? Because there is subcapsular hemorrhages. Then neurological involvement is indicated by severe headache, persistent visual disturbances, hyperreflexia with sustained clonus, convulsions, in which case we diagnose it as eclampsia or stroke. And then next coming to the respiratory system where there is development of pulmonary edema, then there could be fetal growth restriction or placental abruption. These are the different signs which indicates towards the severity of the disease. So when the BP is more than 140 or 90 and or associated with one or more of the following features, the disease is said to be severe, that is severe preeclampsia. Now coming to the fetal investigations. After the maternal investigations, even you have to investigate for the fetal well-being. How do you do that? By cardiotocograph. What is the difference between NST and CTG? NST is when the same test is performed on a non-laboring patient. Cardiotocograph is, it records both maternal uterine contractions as well as the fetal heart sound that occurs in labor. So whenever you do that test in labor, it is called cardiotocograph. Then ultrasound scan for assessment of fetal growth, amniotic fluid volume and umbilical artery flow, that is Doppler studies. These are the investigations done for fetal assessment. Now, what are the differential diagnoses for severe preeclampsia? There could be pre-existing hypertension or new or gestational hypertension, preeclampsia, eclampsia, exacerbation of underlying renal disease or superimposed preeclampsia, eclampsia, or it could be SLE. Hypertensive disorders in pregnancy, as we have discussed earlier, there are 5 types. GTN, that is gestational hypertension, preeclampsia, eclampsia. Again, preeclampsia is divided into non-severe, severe. So, we have already known the criteria to diagnose the disease accordingly. When do you say it is non-severe or severe? The preeclampsia. When the BP is more than 140/90 but less than 160/110, it's called non-severe. When it is more than 160/110, it is severe. Proteinuria, if it is less than or equal to 2 plus on dipstick examination, it is non-severe. Once it is more than 3 plus, it is severe. Oliguria is absent in the non-severe disease, whereas it is present, that is less than 400 ml urine production in 24 hours. It indicates towards the severity of the disease. Headache is absent in non-severe. Visual disturbances is also absent, whereas in severe disease, both headache and visual disturbances will be present. Platelet count will be normal in non-severe disease, whereas it will be less than 1 lakh in severe. HELP syndrome will be absent, whereas in severe disease, HELP is present. That is where AST, ALT is more than 70, LDH is more than 600, bilirubin is more than 1.2. Then serum transaminases levels will be normal in non-severe disease, whereas elevated in severe. Creatinine is normal in non-severe, elevated in severe. Epigastric pain is absent, fetal growth restriction, pulmonary edema, all the severe features are absent in non-severe disease, and whereas these are present in severe disease. Once these features, any of these features are present, then the disease is classified to be severe. How do you manage? Definitely the management is delivery. Now this delivery should be based on the following criteria. First one, we look for age of gestation, whether it is term, preterm. Then we look for the severity of the disease, that is severity of preeclampsia, whether it is severe, non-severe. Then we should also look for maternal and fetal condition by doing the previously told assessment tests. Now coming to the non-severe preeclampsia management. In non-severe variety, we can deliver the woman at or more than 37 weeks of gestation. That is, once she completes her 37 weeks and she is term gestation. Labor induction is encouraged. So, no need of taking her directly for cesarean section. We can give her a trial by induction. For non-severe controlled disease, it can be managed expectantly till term, either at home or hospital, and can be continued till term. Afterwards, induction may be considered once she is term, depending upon the cervical condition, that is the Bishop score. What is expectant management? You should advise her about high protein diet. But yes, coming to the salt restriction, there is no salt restriction or neither forced nor restricted. She can take her normal salt intake daily in her regular diet. How much she'll be taking, that much is advised. Expectant antepartum management of non-severe eclampsia, preeclampsia. In non-severe, again you can manage her as outpatient or inpatient. Now, how do you decide whether you want to admit her and manage, or you can treat her on an outpatient basis? How it should be done? There should be close maternal monitoring once you diagnose the preeclampsia, because this is important to know the severity of the disease as well as to see the progression of the disease. So there should be serial monitoring. Then hospitalization is useful for making these assessments, and also it facilitates rapid intervention in case of rapid progression of the disease. So hospitalization is better. Outpatient care is cost effective option for women with stable mild preeclampsia after initial evaluation. So once you evaluate for the disease, for the severity, then you can divide her into outpatient and inpatient. If she has mild preeclampsia, there is mild preeclampsia, you can manage her on an outpatient basis, calling her frequently. Or if you find that it is a little on the severe side, you can hospitalize and monitor, because once she progresses to the severe variety, there will be easy intervention once she is in the hospital. Laboratory follow-up. What should you do? Okay, now the patient is with you. You have to monitor her. How do you know whether the disease is progressing? These are the following criteria on which you are going to decide whether the disease is progressing or it is controlled. Laboratory follow-up. How should you do? By platelet count, serum creatinine, serum AST. Every once or twice a week, that is every third day. This helps you in assessing the severity as well as the progression of the disease. Assessment of fetal well-being. How do you do? Now that is maternal parameters. Now coming to the fetal parameters. How do you diagnose? How do you monitor? By daily fetal movement count. You have to ask the patient to keep a count on a daily fetal kick count. Then twice weekly fetal NST with AFI. That is called modified Bishop score, modified biophysical profile, or twice weekly biophysical score. And umbilical middle cerebral artery Doppler indices evaluation. This should be done serially. Expectant, then you should assess for the fetal growth. By sonographic estimation of fetal weight is done to look for any fetal growth restriction, that is IUGR and oligohydramnios at the time of diagnosis. Once the patient comes to you, you have to get the baseline investigations done, and depending on the baseline investigations, you can assign her, you can designate as severe and non-severe. At the time of first scan, you have to look for the IUGR and oligohydramnios. If it's normal, you can ask her to repeat the scan after 3 weeks. Then antenatal corticosteroids is considered only if the gestational age is less than 34 weeks and you are planning to deliver her. And now, what about the antihypertensives in expectant management? Is it indicated or not? There are two types of preeclampsia as told earlier, severe and non-severe. So, in non-severe variety, that is in mild rise in BP, where it is 140/90 and less than 160/110, there is no clear evidence of benefit other than to reduce the frequency of episodes of severe hypertension. That means here you are going to intervene by giving antihypertensives only to reduce the frequency of a disease progressing to the severe variety. Now, what are the considerations while delivering or continuing? Now, you are in dilemma whether you have to continue or you have to deliver the patient depending upon all your assessment tests. If fetal considerations, coming to fetal considerations, if you consider her to deliver before term, then there is a risk of prematurity. But if you want to continue till term, the disease may progress and lead to stillbirth and newborn asphyxia. And in maternal complications, there could be worsening of the disease or development of other multi-organ complications. Now, hospitalization. In case of gestational hypertension, you can hospitalize only if it is severe. In mild variety, you can treat her on outpatient basis or daycare basis. Daycare basis is you will admit her in the morning, monitor till evening, and again discharge her in the evening. That is daycare basis. In case of gestational hypertension, only in severe variety you have to hospitalize. In preeclampsia, if the diastolic pressure is more than 100 and or there is proteinuria or there is fetal compromise, any of these features are present, you consider for hospitalization. Or if she is term, because you are planning to terminate the pregnancy, you have to hospitalize the patient. Once you hospitalize her and then you are planning for delivery, either by induction or elective C-section. Now, if you are planning her to induce and deliver, what are the intrapartum monitoring you have to do? Mainly fluids, because here there is no excessive fluid should be given, which will lead to overload and development of pulmonary edema. So, there is fluid restriction to 75 ml per hour, but in normal cases you are giving 100 ml per hour. During delivery, vaginal delivery should be considered unless C-section is required for usual obstetric indication. So, there is no special indication for cesarean section in case of preeclampsia per se. Only if there are any other obstetric indications arising, then you can take off a section. Then antihypertensive should be considered once the BP is uncontrolled, because you have to maintain her BP to less than 160/110 throughout the labor. In third stage, it should be actively managed by giving 10 units of oxytocin IM in presence of thrombocytopenia or coagulopathy, and you have to keep all the drugs required for postpartum hemorrhage in delivering such high risk cases. And ergometrin, that is methergine, should never be given because it will lead to sudden rise of BP and the patient may through convulsions. So here malignant hypertension it may lead to. So we'll give prostaglandins, that is prostadine here, not methergine. Now coming to the management of severe preeclampsia. Once the patient is diagnosed to be severe, the definitive management is delivery. So deliver her regardless of gestational age. When you are telling it is severe, when should you consider? If proteinuria is the only criteria for severe disease, then it is diagnosed as non-severe preeclampsia. That is, if her BP is 140/90 but associated with proteinuria, then it comes under severe variety. But if that's the only criteria, then you can still treat her as non-severe preeclampsia and keep her monitoring. There is no need of delivering. Then mild fetal growth restriction with reassuring Doppler velocimetry, then also you can treat her conservatively. If only severe hypertension is there but no other signs of severe preeclampsia, then also you can treat her conservatively. But these cases should be treated conservatively only if they are remote from term, that is less than 37 weeks. What should be done in case of early onset severe preeclampsia? Here the dilemma is, the controversy is whether you have to continue the pregnancy or you have to terminate, because you have to balance between the risks and benefit. Controversy regarding termination in early onset disease, but there is no beneficial role for mother, as well as perinatal mortality is also high instead of conservative management. So termination is seriously considered in early onset severe preeclampsia. What do you do in cases of severe preeclampsia? You are going to admit her to labor delivery unit. Maternal and fetal assessment is done as told earlier. You can consider giving magnesium sulfate to prevent convulsions as a preventive measure if her BP is more than 160/110, or if BP is less than 160/110 but if she is having any other signs of severe preeclampsia or premonitory symptoms, then even before throwing the convulsions you can give her Maxelf, that is full loading dose. Then treat the dangerous hypertension. If hypertension is more than 150/100, then you have to consider giving antihypertensives. What are the contraindications to conservative management in case of severe preeclampsia? When there are persistent symptoms, that is headache, blurring of vision, epigastric pain, nausea, vomiting, or severe hypertension. When there is development of eclampsia, pulmonary edema, HELLP syndrome, severe renal dysfunction, coagulopathy, abruption, pre-viable fetus, fetal compromise. When these features are present, it is a contraindication to conservative management and you have to deliver her. But if these features are absent, you can still initial 24 to 48 hours observation can be done, because here you will get time to give corticosteroids for lung maturation. During that, there should be frequent evaluation for vital signs and urine output. Daily lab investigation for the development of HELLP syndrome should be done during this 24 to 48 hours when you are considering to give corticosteroids. If ongoing inpatient management is done with daily maternal assessment, serial lab evaluation of renal function and for HELLP syndrome, daily fetal assessment and evaluation of serial growth and amniotic fluid volume. So once you are considering severe preeclampsia case for conservative management, you have to rigorously do monitoring for them daily for both maternal assessment as well as fetal assessment. Maternal assessment, how do you do? By checking her BP daily and getting the lab investigations done for progressing or worsening of the disease, for looking for LFT, RFT and daily urinary protein excretion. And daily fetal assessment is done by daily fetal movement kick count, NST, and ultrasound for fetal growth and amniotic fluid volume as well as biophysical profile. Then you can deliver her at 34 weeks after a course of steroids. Indications for delivery in women with less than 34 weeks of gestation. Corticosteroid therapy for lung maturation and delivery after maternal stabilization. Here you can give only the initial first dose, but you cannot wait for the complete coverage. In what cases you can give initial first dose? If it is less than 34 weeks for lung maturation, in uncontrolled severe hypertension, eclampsia, pulmonary edema, placental abruption, DIC, non-reassuring fetal status, fetal demise. In such cases you are going to terminate her immediately. So here you are considering only the first initial dose of betnosol. Whereas corticosteroid therapy for lung maturation, when there is delayed delivery for 48 hours if possible, here you can give complete coverage of 2 doses. When there is PROM or if she is in labor, when there is platelet count less than 1 lakh, hepatic transaminases twice the upper limit of normal, when there is IUGR, oligo, reversed end-diastolic flow in the umbilical artery or worsening of renal dysfunction. In such cases, you have to terminate her, but you can still wait for 48 hours until the corticosteroid coverage is given. Acute management of preeclampsia. Usually in our setup, we consider giving IV labetalol. The dose is 20 mg IV in 100 ml NS over 20 minutes. Then you have to recheck the BP after 10 minutes. If it is still not controlled, then next time you are going to give 40 milligram IV in 100 ml NS. Again recheck after 10 minutes. If it is still not controlled, you can consider giving 80 milligram. So maximum of 80 milligram IV dose can be given. If it's still not controlled, then you have to go for the other management, which should be done in ICU, because hydrolysine and all are to be given in ICU setups where there is sudden drop of BP after giving. So with adequate monitoring they have to given. But in our pregnant patients, we usually consider giving IV labetalol in severe hypertension. Rarely we require any other drug other than labetalol. The target BP should be, systolic should be between 130 150 and diastolic between 80 to 100, or mean arterial pressure should not be more than 25% over 2 hours. Cerebral or myocardial ischemia or infarction can be induced by aggressive antihypertensive therapy because the blood pressure falls below the range at which tissue perfusion can be maintained by autoregulation. So you should not give antihypertensives where there could be sudden fall of BP. There should be controlled reduction of the blood pressure in such patients. Women who fail to respond to the first line management in the ICU setup with the consultation of the anesthetist, maternal fetal medicine and critical care doctors, second line drugs can be used like sodium nitroprusside. Again I told you these are all emergency drugs only to be given in the ICU setups. And max self dosages for severe preeclampsia and eclampsia. Eclampsia, you know, once the patient throws convulsions, definitely anticonvulsants, that is magnesium sulfate, should be given. But in case of severe preeclampsia also max self loading dose should be considered to prevent the development of convulsions. That is called there are two doses, two regimens, IV dose and IM dose. Here we commonly used dose protocol in our hospital is Pritchard's regimen. In continuous IV dose, 4 to 6 grams loading dose of Maxelf is diluted in 100 ml of NS and given over 15 to 20 minutes. Begin with 2 gram per, and IV dose to begin with 2 gram per hour in 100 ml of maintenance infusion, or some recommend 1. It is usually 1 to 2 gram per hour. And every assess deep tenon reflexes periodically, that is every 4th hourly. Some measure serum magnesium sulfate levels, but that is not easily available in all the labs. So there are other methods to diagnose the normal physiological levels of Maxelf. Once you give the loading dose, it should be between 4 to 7 milliequivalents per liter. But anything above this causes signs and symptoms by which we can assess the Maxelf toxicity. Like you can check for urine output, respiratory rate and deep tenon reflexes periodically. And this Maxelf is discontinued after 24 hours of delivery or the last convulsion, whichever is later. In IM dose, what we do is total 14 grams of Maxelf is given. 4 grams IV and 10 grams IM. This 4 grams IV is diluted to make it 20% solution and given IV over 15 to 20 minutes. And IM dose is not diluted as it is 50% solution. 5 grams IM in each buttock it is given. This is loading dose. And while giving periodically every 4th hourly, what all should be checked? The patellar reflex, respiratory rate and urine output should be measured properly. How the Maxelf toxicity is indicated? By impaired breathing. At which level of Maxelf it occurs? The Maxelf in the body will be 8 to 10 milliequivalents per liter. Arrhythmia and systole occurs at levels of 10 to 13. Decreased absent deep tenon reflex occur at level less than at 4 milliequivalents later. And she goes into shock if once it is more than 30 milliequivalents. For maintenance dose, following must be present. Then only you have to give her every 4th hourly 5 grams IM dose. When the Maxelf level is 4 to 7 milliequivalents, which is measured twice daily. But in our laboratory it is not available, and most commonly everywhere it is not done. So other three parameters what you can measure before giving maintenance dose is patellar reflex. It should be present. Urine output at least 30 ml per hour should be present, and respiratory rate should be more than 12 minutes. What happens in toxicity? There is a respiratory depression. What if max self toxicity occurs? Immediately max self infusion. If you are following IV dose, it should be stopped. Supplemental oxygen should be given to her because there is a respiratory depression. You should send to lab the serum magnesium levels and immediately give 10 ml of 10% calcium gluconate as slow intravenous push, because this is the antidote for max self. For severe uncontrolled disease, definitely termination is considered. Induction, after looking for the cervical with cervical ripening agents like prostaglandins, followed by induction. If it fails, section can be done, or in case of uncontrolled disease, elective section can be done without going for induction of labor. Postpartum management. Now the patient delivers. After delivery, you have to monitor the BP and consider giving her certain drugs or avoid the drugs which are contraindicated. NSAIDs are usually avoided in a patient with preeclampsia. Patient control fentanyl or remifentanil analgesia or epidural analgesia is considered. What are the complications of preeclampsia? There are immediate complications and remote complications. In the immediate complications, it could affect either both mother and baby. In mother, the complications during pregnancy are eclampsia, accidental hemorrhage, that is abruption, oliguria, diminished vision, HELLP syndrome, cerebral hemorrhage, acute respiratory distress syndrome. During labor, what could occur? The BP might shoot up and she may throw convulsions, which is called eclampsia, or it may lead to postpartum hemorrhage. During puerperium, again eclampsia if it occurs less than 48 hours of delivery, or she may go in for shock or develop sepsis. In fetus, what are the complications? IUGR, IUD, asphyxia, prematurity. It could be either iatrogenic or spontaneous, the prematurity. The remote complications of severe preeclampsia: residual hypertension, recurrent preeclampsia, chronic renal disease, or abruptio placentae. Coming to HELLP syndrome. What is HELLP syndrome? This is one of the signs of severe preeclampsia. There is acronym for HELLP. H is hemolysis, EL is elevated liver proteins, LP is low platelet count. These are the three features which indicate towards the development of HELLP syndrome. It is a rare multisystem disorder that complicates pregnancy with lab evidence of microangiopathic hemolysis, hepatic dysfunctioning, and thrombocytopenia. It is a complication mostly associated with preeclampsia but can also be diagnosed rarely, though in absence of these could be sometimes present without the presence of hypertension. The incidence is 20% of women with the severe preeclampsia develop HELLP syndrome. The triad is hemolysis, low platelet, elevated liver enzymes to more than twice the normal. How do you diagnose? The clinical features could be epigastric or right upper quadrant pain, nausea, vomiting. Lab investigation shows hemolysis, elevated liver enzymes, and low platelet. Hemolysis is the main hallmark of the triad. How hemolysis is indicated? By LDH level more than 600, increased, that is low serum haptoglobin, high serum bilirubin, abnormal peripheral blood picture showing schistocytes and Burr cells, and hemoglobin percent will be low, which is the last one to develop. Liver enzymes, there is high AST and ALT to more than 70, that is almost twice the normal. Platelet count will usually be less than 1 lakhs. There are three classes in the HELLP syndrome depending upon the severity. Class 1 is the most severe form, where platelet count is less than 50,000, total serum LDH is more than 600, AST, ALT is more than 70. Class 2, it is a moderate variety where platelet counts are between 50,000 to 1 lakh. Again, total serum LDH is more than 600, AST, ALT is more than 70. Class 3 is transitional or partial or the mild variety where platelet is more than 1 lakh but less than 1.5. LDH is more than 600, AST, ALT is more than 40. What is the management of HELLP syndrome? Initiate IV dexamethasone. Only for dangerously low platelet count, when it is less than 50,000, you have to consider giving IV steroids, that is IV dexamethasone. In antepartum period, the dose is 10 mg BD IV. Once she delivers, the dose changes. On the first day, it is 10 milligram BD. On the second day, it is 5 milligram IV BD. How do you manage once you diagnose a case of HELLP syndrome? If she is not in the tertiary care, if she is in the a care level which is below the tertiary level, you have to immediately consider to refer her to a tertiary care center where there is multidisciplinary approach. Admit to labor and delivery unit. Give IV magnesium sulfate because this is a severe form of preeclampsia. Antihypertensive should be started if the BP is more than or equal to 160 by 105. If it is less than 23 weeks, that is, there is no risk of there is no chance of viability of the fetus, or if there is more than, it is more than 34 weeks, or if there is presence of fetal distress or maternal distress like eclampsia, abruption, renal failure, respiratory distress, suspected liver hematoma, all these features are present, then you have to immediately deliver her. If these are absent, that is, if she is between 23 to 34 weeks, complete the steroid course over 24 to 48 hours. You can wait and then consider terminating. The Mississippi classification is another classification to know the severity of the disease of HELLP syndrome. Now coming to superimposed preeclampsia on chronic hypertension. What is this? When do you tell it is superimposed? When there is new onset proteinuria in a hypertensive woman but no proteinuria before 20 weeks of gestation, or there is sudden increase in proteinuria or BP or platelet count less than 1 lakh in women with hypertension and proteinuria before 20 weeks of gestation. In eclampsia patient, how the patient presents? There is generalized clonic seizure in patient with preeclampsia, not attributed to any other cause. She should not have any other causes for these convulsions. If seizure occur beyond 48 to 72 hours postpartum, the causes may be more likely other than eclampsia. It occurs in 2 to 3% of severely preeclamptic women not receiving anti-seizure prophylaxis. Eclampsia is nothing but preeclampsia plus seizures or coma. What is the differential diagnosis of eclampsia? All the conditions where the patient may through convulsions like epilepsy, intracranial hemorrhage or thrombosis, meningitis, cerebral malaria, amniotic fluid embolism. These all conditions may mimic the picture of preeclampsia. But in pregnant women, until and otherwise ruled out, it is considered to be as eclampsia and treated as eclampsia. The pathogenesis of seizures. There is cerebral overregulation in response to high systemic blood pressure, which causes vasospasm of cerebral arteries, underperfusion of the brain, localized ischemia or infarction, cytotoxic edema. Second, loss of autoregulation of cerebral blood flow in response to the high systemic pressure. Example, hypertensive encephalopathy, hyperperfusion, endothelial damage and vasogenic edema. How to manage? You have to, there should be maintenance of airway patency and prevention of aspiration, and you should prevent the pregnant patient from getting injured due to convulsions. So you have to put her in a railed cot, rolled on to her left side, and protect her from trauma. Supplement oxygen at the rate of 8 to 10 liters per minute via a face mask. And if the BP is high, you have to manage accordingly by giving IV labetalol. And prevention of recurrent seizures, evaluation for prompt delivery. Definitive treatment of eclampsia is delivery irrespective of the gestational age. Always the eclampsia patient should be managed in eclampsia room. In your clinical postings, you might have seen beside the labor room or somewhere in the nearest vicinity, there is a room labeled as eclampsia room. Why it is called eclampsia room? What are the special features to say it is eclampsia room? It is a isolated single room where there is no noise. It should be it should be silent, and there should be no light and air. The windows are closed and the windows are usually covered with a dark sheets to prevent the entry of light into the room. So there should be no light, no air, no sound, silent room. because all these features, all these light, air and sound trigger the development of convulsion. That's why always the woman is managed in the eclampsia room to prevent recurrent seizures. There should be protection and supporting care during the convulsion. How? Immediately you should put her in a rail cot to prevent injury, then protection of the airway and to prevent the tongue bite and falling of the tongue back, then correction of hypoxia and acidosis. Control of convulsion is done by giving max self loading dose. There are so many regimens to be followed. It depends upon the institution what regimen they follow. Here we follow Pritchard's regimen, which includes both IM and IV route. Then intermittent antihypertensive therapy should be started to control the BP judiciously. Limitation of IV fluids because there will be overladen and development of pulmonary edema. Avoidance of diuretics and hyperosmotic agents because already the intravascular volume is low. If you give any diuretics, what happens? Again, there is further reduction of the intravascular volume, which could lead to sudden IUD. Then there should be prompt delivery of the fetus to achieve the cure. Magnesium sulfate protocol. Dosages, as told earlier, IM doses are as active as IV doses in controlling seizure. The CBI regimen includes only IV dose, whereas Pritchard's include both IM and IV. Duration, how long should you continue this? The maintenance dose is 24 hours from the last convulsion or from the delivery, which one is later. Say if she has delivered after throwing convulsion, then you have to consider 24 hours for the delivery. What are the complications of eclampsia? Again, it is all pre-eclampsia. First of all is once she is throwing convulsion, she may fall on the ground and get injured. There could be tongue bite due to generalized clonic-tonic convulsion or injuries due to fall, or because she is prolonged on the bed, there could be development of bed sore. Systemic, there could be development of pulmonary edema, pneumonia, ARDS, embolism. Cardiac, acute left ventricular failure. In renal, there could be renal failure, hepatic necrosis, subcapsular hematoma. In CNS, cerebral hemorrhage, edema. Vision, diminished vision due to retinal detachment or occipital lobe ischemia. Hematology, low platelet count and DIC. Postpartum, there could be development of shock, sepsis and psychosis. Chronic hypertension in pregnancy. When do you say it is chronic hypertension? Hypertension is diagnosed before pregnancy, or if it is diagnosed hypertension before pregnancy, diagnosed before 20 weeks of gestation, not due to gestational trophoblastic disease. And if hypertension is diagnosed after 20 weeks but persistent after 12 weeks postpartum. Chronic hypertension and pregnancy. What are the etiology? It could be essential hypertension, which is the most common cause, or secondary hypertension due to genetic causes like glucocorticoid, remediable aldosteronism, Liddle syndrome, renal parenchymal and renovascular diseases, endocrine like primary hyperaldosteronism, Cushing syndrome, pheochromocytoma, vascular, aortic coarctation, estrogen use and others. I would like to conclude the session. Thank you.